Yo, so I just wanted to let you know up front that there will be a detailed list of timestamps below, and I certainly won't blame anyone for using them, because I be yapping in this video. But there was a lot that I wanted to talk about. It's not exactly organized into any kind of optimal order of subjects. I don't think I really even discussed the combat mechanics until like 40 minutes into the video. Also, if the video feels disjointed or out of order at any point, I apologize, but it is what it is. It's just one of those kinds of projects. I recorded my basic first impressions after the first week or so playing the game a little bit every day, and then over the course of the last week and a half or so of continuing to play the game more and more with each passing day, finishing the story, and obviously editing this video, I ended up with a bunch of stuff that I wanted to update, clarify, and topics that I just wanted to expand upon further. But ultimately, I do think I ended up with a pretty well-rounded video, weighing the pros and cons, and at least touching upon pretty much every subject that I thought was worth discussing, as there are a lot of components to this game, frankly. But anyway, that is all to say, feel free to use the timestamps. They are there for your convenience. And hope that you enjoy the video as much as I've been enjoying this game. Okay, so quick footage disclaimer for full transparency about the visuals on screen. I'm probably going to be using a lot of generic open world footage throughout the video, as I didn't start capturing footage until a few nights ago and was already a little bit into the game. And part of me really just wants to show off how amazing this game can look when it's at basically its best anyways, because it's absolutely gorgeous. Arguably the best looking anime game I've ever laid eyes on. Definitely the best looking open world anime game I've ever laid my eyes on. So most of what you'll be seeing is captured on PC with the cinematic preset, DLSS, reflections, and lighting effects all turned on. I don't remember which ones specifically, so I'll just throw them on screen. I'm usually getting somewhere between 45 and 60 FPS moment to moment, running the game with an NVIDIA RTX 3090 and an i9-13900K CPU. So I'm basically running a top-of-the-line GPU, but from 2 entire generations ago. And once again, that's keeping me pretty close to a steady 60 FPS, even in demanding scenes, most of the time, even at maxed out settings. Even though my BIOS literally isn't updated with the game launcher even warning me not to run the game without updating it. I say this all because I do think that it's worth running this game on PC if you can manage to get it to run smoothly, and hopefully that'll give you some relative idea about what kind of graphical fidelity and performance you might be able to get with your setup. Oh yeah, and before someone calls me out, yes, the frame rate has certainly been a bit choppier since I actually started capturing footage, floating between 35 and 60 FPS. And I don't know what to tell you, I'm running 2 monitors and a TV, which is where the game signal is actually going out at 3840 by 2160, actual 4K, and every time I start capturing footage, my computer sounds like it's about to take liftoff. And it's worth it. The game looks and runs so well in person. I had seen a lot of people worried about what the optimization would be like since it's running on UE5, but I've had a really great visual experience across multiple platforms, PC, PS5, and mobile. And I mean, to speak of optimization for a moment, the fact that this game even runs on mobile has got to be some kind of modern miracle. It might not look anything like max settings on the PC, but it still looks good, and it has a huge open world, dozens of relatively detailed interiors, and even the apartments/mansions that you buy, which are customizable, are directly connected to the open world, not separate instances. You can go out to the balcony, jump down to ground level, climb back up, and go right back into your apartment. And the fact that all of this runs on mobile reliably honestly blows my mind. It also kind of proves that a UE5 game can be well optimized, just often isn't. But anyway, I mostly just didn't want people thinking that I was intentionally exaggerating what kind of performance that I was getting at these visual settings. Anyway, the game still looks great on PS5 though, and everything is cross-platform, so there's no harm in just trying it out on whatever platform you personally prefer. Anyway, I should also say before I just start gassing this game up that Neverness to Everness is the first gacha game that I've played in many years, and the only open world gacha game I've tried out since playing a few hours of Genshin Impact a few years ago. I had essentially sworn gacha games off entirely for many years, for many of the obvious reasons that I'm sure everyone has already heard about the genre by now. But I decided to give this one a try after seeing the visuals, the combat, the open world exploration, the gorgeous and often very sexy character designs, and of course, the waifu dating mechanics. And as a whole, just the myriad and variety of content that the game seemed to be putting on offer. So perhaps I've been wooed by the open world gacha formula, having not properly experienced it up until now, but my baseline impression of Neverness to Everness is that it feels kind of weird to even call it a gacha game, at least the way that I've been playing it personally. In many ways, it feels more apt to call it a game that happens to have some gacha mechanics in it. And basically what I mean by that is that my casual playstyle of this game thus far, having just reached Hunter level 20 and City Tycoon level 8, has been mostly playing story missions, exploring the open world, racing, fishing, managing my cafe, and occasionally trying to pull some characters, which would be nice to have, but which I don't necessarily feel like I need to make progress or anything like that. And, you know, basically I've just been playing like an hour every evening before bed to kind of chillax after working on these videos. Yeah, that didn't last very long. My gameplay session times have definitely been spiraling out of control as the days go by. But anyway, the game is incredibly generous and lenient in pretty much every way that you could imagine, and every way that you would imagine a gacha game specifically would not be. Okay, so I said in the original recording that the game was generous and only elaborated a little bit, so let's not just be vague about it. I'll give you a few specific examples of what I mean. First off, character banners have close to a 2% draw rate for drawing the featured S rank, at 1.87% to be precise. You hit soft pity pulls at 70 pulls and hard pity at 90 pulls. As I'm sure you've heard already, there's also no 50-50 on character banners, so if you proc the S rank pull, you do get who you pulled for no matter what. Thus far, summoning dice, as well as Analyth, the material or currency that you can also use for pulls on either banner, are quite easy to come across. You can literally get Analyth not just from dailies and weeklies and the like, but also from just running around the world fighting anomalies. There are also multiple currencies and materials which you can trade in for it. Also, unused pity progress carries over to the next character banner if you don't use it during the current cycle. And you know, that's whether you have 8 or 80, it'll carry over to the next character banner. You can also respec awakening abilities for free. So if there's a certain awakening that you like to use for combat, but another one that you like to use for exploring or whatever, you can switch that up willy-nilly, totally free, as many times as you want. You can also spend a little more currency when summoning modules to guarantee the preferred shapes that you want. Now, to be fair on that point, if you want to guarantee multiple duplicates of the same preferred shape, that is going to cost you more and more bonus coins with each extra duplicate shape that you want to guarantee during that pull. But with that said, you can easily just select, for example, all Type 2 and Type 3 modules and not have to pay for any duplicates. And the Type 2 and Type 3 modules is really all you need for any of the like module type specific character bonuses that you can get. For example, with not only using all Type 2 modules gets you like 60% bonus crit rate for free. So personally, I think just customizing your role for all Type 2 and Type 3 modules is pretty much the way to go and doesn't cost anything extra. Anyway, all of the modules also tell you exactly what all of their substats are going to be before you invest in upgrading them, and the filtering tool in the game is actually really useful and intuitive, definitely one of the better ones that I've seen in games like this. There's also no RNG in what a substat will be numerically from piece to piece, as in every copy of an arc or weapon is the same stat-wise, and every, for example, gold Type 2 module with an attack percentage substat will be the same as any other gold Type 2 module with an attack percentage substat. That substat will always be the same number so long as it's on the same grade of module or cartridge, so If you get the luck of the draw, say 4 substats you wanted all on one legendary piece, you can know with certainty that you don't need to re-roll in hopes of slightly better numbers. If you get all 4 of the substats you want on a legendary piece, that's the one. And those numbers will always be the same when found on the same grade or rarity of gear. You can also recycle old modules that you've upgraded to get back some of the resources you invested into them once you outgrow them. When farming for consoles, or pretty much anything actually, any consoles, currencies, upgrade materials for example, that you can do in these little miniature dungeon fights, you can just spend double stamina and get double the rewards in half the time. There are, at least thus far, simple ways to farm for every material that I've needed for leveling and equipment upgrades, having just hit level 50 with 2 teams of characters and arcs. There are tons of ways to buy or exchange different upgrade currencies. You can acquire generic loot generating items that produce various different upgrade materials depending on what you need for your current upgrade or ascension. There are generic upgrade materials that can be converted into many other upgrade materials for those same ascensions, etc. ad infinitum. I could go on and on mentioning various elements of this, but ultimately I think you would just have to play the game yourself to see. But I do think, all hype aside, it's difficult not to see why so many people think that the game has been very generous and lenient with summoning and currencies and upgrade paths and all of that stuff thus far. Now, it does take quite a while to wrap your brain around all the different menus and farming methods and currency generating leisure activities in City Tycoon, as well as various open world tasks that I do personally think are worth doing for farming currencies and materials while just exploring the open world. But once you understand most of those elements, I do think it's very simple and easy to farm whatever you might be needing at the moment. And once again, basically no matter where you're at in the game, even if you were to exhaust both types of your stamina, there are still all sorts of activities you can continue engaging in the open world, as well as the City Tycoon, where you can continue doing any minigame you want. You just won't continue to generate the same revenue for it. Now, to be fair, it's not exactly guaranteed that the game will always be this generous and lenient in so many ways. Just look at that upcoming Porsche event, for example. That car could easily cost you tens of millions of fawns if you really want to guarantee it. So just keep in mind, this is still a gacha game. There are inevitably going to be straight up whale traps occasionally. But anyway, and we're currently in not just the honeymoon phase, but also a launch window phase where lots of free stuff is being given out frequently through reward codes and frequent story/progress rewards, which will likely never be as generous as this again unless they end up doing some kind of massive holiday event or something like that. It's just difficult for me to imagine that there will ever be another similar situation where we're not only getting all of the dailies and weeklies and seasonal rewards and season pass rewards, as well as all of the, freebies we get while we're finishing through the main story missions, the side missions, and the progression awards, and all that stuff, which is, gonna be stacked and front-loaded while the game is launching. Also, as far as the gacha summons go, don't let the fancy board game or even the rates fool you. It is still ultimately basically random. It took me like 80 pulls to get Nonali, and my cousin got her in like 12 pulls, so...
Making my way downtown, walking fast, faces passing, I'm homebound. And I need you, and I miss you, and now I want you.
Do keep the hype under control. This is still a gacha game. There is still a huge element of randomness as well as gambling psychology, as is the case with all of these games. And sometimes it's just gonna feel like you're at the mercy of the cruel, cruel gods of RNG, no matter what the numbers say. And I guess the last thing that I should say here for full transparency's sake is that I have spent exactly $25 on the game. So while I do still think that the game is very free-to-play friendly, with it being very easy to make progress by just playing the game, I can no longer truly call myself free-to-play. I'm certainly not proud of it, but I do think that they've earned my $25, to be fair. Anyway, to be specific, I bought the $15 launch pack, which got you some extra dice specific to the Nonali banner, and this, I'll admit, was really just pure impatience. Frankly, I just wanted to start walking up walls with Nonoli as soon as possible. And more importantly, I bought the $10 second tier of the Season Pass, which just nets you a ton of extra materials and stamina refresh items and stuff as rewards as you progress through the game. Obviously, if you've ever seen one of these seasonal pass banner type things, you probably know exactly what to expect from it. And I will say, at $10 at everything that it nets you, it's probably the best bang for your buck if you are going to spend money. And with all of that said, to give you an idea of the progression speed for someone who, once again, has spent 25 bucks, but who is also super slow and has absolutely no interest in optimization, spending most of their time just casually exploring or do whatever currently interests me. Like, seriously, oftentimes literally just walking around the city, taking in how beautiful it is, but with gaming sessions that have been spiraling out of control more and more, to be honest. I'd wager 2 to 3 hours a day now, spread between mostly PC and mobile, probably a little more on weekend days. I now have, as of May 17th, once again, just over 2 weeks of progress, a level 34 account, a level 15 City Tycoon, a few random S ranks that I got through regular banner pulls, and 2 teams of level 50s, all with level 50 arcs, and enough cartridges and modules to equip them with not amazing, but decent gear, slowly but surely making progress through the freaking underground train. But yeah, I mean, easy peasy. No min-maxing, no looking up extensive guides on anything, just playing the game every day and doing what currently interests me, and yet, honestly, making pretty good progress, feels like. But anyway, back to the original script. And for the gacha itself, which I often forget is even a part of the game, it's just as generous, with easily obtained summoning currencies and pity pulls that don't have a 50-50, so if you pity pull on the Nonoli banner, you're not going to get some random character that you don't want, you're going to get Nonoli. And of course, there are S-rank freebies on the second launch banner as well, once again easily obtained through casual gameplay. I already got Hathor as a freebie on the secondary banner after I think like 50 pulls, most of which I got from just free-to-play gameplay for like an hour every evening for a couple of days, and like redeeming a couple of the launch codes which sent you a little bit of extra free currency. So once again, free-to-play, casual, and I've already got a free S rank and I'm over halfway to getting Nonoli as well. Anyway, I think 2 of the core reasons that I've got such immense joy out of playing this game come down to the open world exploration. Reason 1, if you can run this game on PC at max settings, do so, because it's literally the most visually stunning anime-style open-world game I've ever played in my entire freaking life. It still looks great on PS5, and apparently even better on PS5 Pro, but if you can run it on PC with the cinematic preset and all the fancy lighting and reflection settings turned on, it is very much worth it. One of the best looking games I've ever seen. Running down the street, watching the cherry blossoms fall from the trees above while the reflections bounce off of rain in the street, looking up at the slowly morphing clouds or down at the ocean below, the moon and stars and the galaxy up in the sky at night, or gliding down through the night from the highest building that you can find and climb up to and, gazing upon the neon signs below. Many such sights in this open world are a glory to behold, and there's plenty of variety there, which I'll talk a bit more about later. So while a lot of that is graphic fidelity stuff, I owe just as much of my visual all to the game just having a dense, well thought out open world with real visual direction and lots of interesting, unique locations. There are tons of unique skyscrapers scattered throughout, neon signs, graffiti covered walls, tunnels and train stations, a beautiful ocean, just all sorts of unique sights that make just walking and or driving around the world a meditative, relaxing exploration experience in and of itself, even if you're not really even doing anything but exploring. Okay, so I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to put this in the video, but another thing that I wanted to quickly talk about is just like the joy of moving through the world in this game, as well as the way that unique character utilities and character switching interplays with that. So obviously you can scale buildings in this game. You've got your rooftop to rooftop parkour action, and obviously you've got the ability to glide. Everything since Genshin Impact has had the ability to glide, or basically just straight up fly in the case of Wuthering Waves. But something that I really like about this game is the unique character utilities and character switching, and the ways that this can make not just combat more efficient, but also make moving through the world more efficient. So if I was to come up to this building in the open world and I wanted to scale it, get to the other side, and get back down to ground level and keep moving as quickly as possible, I could obviously just use the same tools that I was just using with the main character. But what would be much faster would be to use Nonali's little zero gravity ability, time out my sprints just right, and then switch to Hathor, double jump, and use her dive bomb. And I'm over here in literally seconds, which is something that's unique to this character combination, and also something that you kind of have to practice to be able to do while switching characters just right. I obviously could not get that right the first time. I couldn't do anything like that the first time I tried using these characters together, and it's still kind of difficult just to time the character switching just right sometimes, to be honest. But anyway, Nonali's zero gravity ability is kind of an obvious example at this point, but Hotori's banner also just dropped, and she has the ability to freeze time. And the first two things that come to mind for me with that are like stopping traffic while I cross the road and stopping trains, or freezing the police while I make my escape. I've also seen people online talk about how you can use this ability to freeze in-game timers. So for example, for the Pink Paws heist, you can use this ability to give yourself extra time to collect more loot and finish the mission. I'm not sure if that would work the same way with the underground train or not, but that's another idea that immediately comes to my mind at least. But beyond that, I can only imagine in a couple of months or even years of them adding more characters with more unique utilities like this, and the ability to use character switching to combine them and chain them together in different ways. Like, I can only imagine the sort of weird stuff that we'll be able to do as many more characters with unique utilities come out. You might even imagine chaining 3 or 4 of these abilities together in some unique way, but anyway, I'm just letting my imagination run a little wild on that part. The one caveat I will add to that to balance out my excitement is that not all of these abilities are always necessarily perfect in execution. Even Nonali's zero gravity ability, amazingly satisfying as it is most of the time, occasionally just kind of fails to trigger altogether for certain surfaces. Things like chain link fences and even some particular walls scattered throughout scenic areas in the open world. I'm hopeful that this is something they'll work out in the future, as many cases of this do seem kind of just inconsistent, but it only happens to me every once in a while. Just thought that it was still worth bringing up to balance out the hype a little. But anyway, back to whatever I was talking about before. And to top it all off, there are a shocking number of buildings that you can actually enter in the open world. Vastly more than I've come to usually expect, even from something high budget like GTA. And the wonder of exploring that open world doesn't by any means stop there, because the actual coolest thing about it is running into semi-unique battle scenarios in said open world. I believe these are technically all anomalies that you can requisition from the bounty board thing, whatever you call it in this game, but I've honestly been ignoring taking on said anomaly bounties, because when you just randomly have one of those serendipitous moments where you find one of these unique or semi-unique battle scenarios while just goofing off and exploring the open world organically, it can feel so freaking cool when things line up just right for the, serendipitous scenario once again. My first example of this, the first one that I experienced, which I sadly wasn't recording at the time, but when I was just enjoying my time parkour jumping and gliding from building top to building top, when suddenly I found myself standing before a sentient pair of boxing gloves atop a city building. I started talking to the boxing glove shaped anomaly, and it basically gave me the lowdown on its pursuit of power and how it wanted to enjoy an honest, exciting duel with me. Upon me accepting, a makeshift boxing ring formed into existence around us atop said building, and a semi-unique open world boss battle began. And it was freaking rad, owed in large part due to the setup to the fight and the location, and once again just the serendipitousness of it all. Now, while this one in particular was partially happenstance in its epicness as a nighttime rooftop boxing ring battle, as I've since re-experienced that very same encounter again again at a higher level, but on a random city street. I did recently have another similarly unique experience exploring the open world, which was somehow even cooler than that one. I had just finished souping up my car with all of the upgrades available and engaging in a few fun little casual races in the City Tycoon minigame races.
Coco, you're so great at driving.
But I still felt like dogging my car out in some more unique scenarios, so I just went racing down the road, with Mint in the passenger seat of course. Gotta bring Bay along for the ride.
I love not needing to walk.
So I'm approaching a tunnel nearing top speed when suddenly a flaming headless anomaly on the back of a motorcycle comes flying by me in a trail of blue flames, running cars off the road and causing explosions along the way. Totally unscripted and totally out of the blue, at least from my perspective. It's just totally randomly happening as I'm racing around. And I'm literally sitting there freaking out over how freaking cool and serendipitous this event is. Like, do I have to race this headless motorcycle anomaly? Do I have to race to catch it so that I can unlock its boss battle? Is this a Durarara reference? So anyway, I race to catch it, and when I do, I'm teleported into a reality marble-like anomaly realm, where once again, I get to experience a fun, unique boss battle, one of many to come, and once again, it was just literally one of the coolest freaking things I've ever experienced in an open world game. Gacha or not, anime style or not, it was freaking rad, serendipitous, it felt so organic, it just happened out in the open world while I was just goofing off exploring, which made it all the more satisfying and cathartic when I was able to beat the boss. For this reason, I'm honestly somewhat tempted to just keep ignoring bounties and the ability to track them, because it's just so much more fun to suddenly run up on or get ambushed by an open world boss that you didn't even know was going to be there, because it can feel so organic and unique when it happens that way. It feels like an experience that you only got, even if it's, probably pretty similar to what a lot of other people have experienced while playing the game. Which is all to say, casually and curiously exploring NTE's open world has been an absolute freaking blast, and for me, the ideal way to play much of the game. Also, another thing that I really love about this game is how alive the characters and the world feels, especially for a gacha game. For example, you can run into allies randomly throughout the world based on time of day, just engaging in their general routines out in the open world. And although I haven't experienced this yet, I've heard that you also sometimes run into groups and even entire factions in similar scenarios. And the ones that I'm talking about here, these are like the mini versions. Like, you might find a character out shopping, you might find Hotori just like walking around checking out stuff in an auction, you might find Daffodil out just like admiring the butcher's like amazing knife work as he cuts meat, little stuff like that. And these are like the mini versions. These don't have cutscenes, but they are fully voiced. Also, the pedestrians. You can't run over them like in GTA, but you can beat them up and steal their stuff. They'll shout you down if you bump into them, yell at you for walking in the road or standing on their cars, try to beat you up if you bother them enough, or even run over you occasionally if you get in the way at the wrong time. Lots of little stuff like that. Obviously, also, you can get in trouble with the cops if you do too much of that, and there's a little star system. It's not as fleshed out as GTA, but it does escalate. Like, I think when you get to like 4 stars, there are these drones that come out and like start trying to drop bombs on you, for example. But anyway, lots of little stuff like that. And there's a ton of unique dialogue for all of the random pedestrian NPC type stuff. Probably my favorite, when you walk out in front of someone driving, being the classic line, "Is this one of those fake accident scams?" Beautiful. You can also run into characters out in the open world and trigger straight up voiced cutscenes and mini date scenes. And there's a surprising amount of variety to these. Like, obviously pretty much all of the characters have certain generic things, like you can run into them out in the open world, wanting to watch a movie or trying to get something to eat, for example. But there are also some unique, like character specific scenarios that, really help to flesh out their characters as well. For example, I've ran into Lacrimosa a couple of times, and one of the encounters was, once again, like running into her at a restaurant, but what was really hilarious was what she ended up ordering while you sat together and ate was like this giant multi-layered pure tomato sandwich, which she proceeded to add like extra ketchup to, which was absolutely ridiculous, but totally character for her. On the total opposite side of things, I also ran into her like out in the countryside in a junkyard a couple of days ago, and she went into this whole spiel about how she has a really hard time controlling her powers, so she wanted to find somewhere to train where she wouldn't end up hurting anyone or damaging anything that someone might actually care about. And this led to a, short-lived but pretty heartwarming little scene. Obviously, once again, there's more like character-specific stuff like this. For example, if you run into Fadia out into the open world, she's always like hitting on you or trying to get you drunk and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of character-specific stuff that, once again, sort of fleshes out their personalities. Nanali is another one that I've ran into a couple of times, and like obviously she has all of the more generic stuff, like you can run into her wanting to watch a movie or get something to eat or whatever, but there's also another one that I really love where you can run into her outside of a shop where she's getting ready to buy an electric scooter, and I won't spoil where this one goes. I don't want to just spoil all of the encounters I've had so far, but let me just say, if you run into Nanali outside of the electric scooter shop, on that little Main Street alley that has all of the little miniature store interiors, if you run into her there, definitely go watch that cutscene because it is peak cinema. Really funny. But once again, I won't just go on spoiling all of the ones that I've seen. Just know that these interactions are worth engaging in. A lot of them are really funny, like super character specific, and they're fully voiced with cutscenes and everything. It's really cool. You can also, of course, invite each obtained gacha character to ride as passenger with you while driving, as well as while racing. And when doing taxi missions, sometimes you even end up picking up those same gacha characters and carrying them to a character-specific destination. And in each of those three scenarios, driving, racing, and doing the taxi missions, they actually have unique dialogue, which is really cool. You can also, as I'm sure you've seen plenty of people talking about online, invite most of the girls to your apartment as well. And the devs have said in a future patch they are going to be adding the male characters to this as well. So if you've been eager to invite your husbandos over as well, don't worry, that is coming. And while there are a lot of generic activities that you can get up to with each of the girls so far, some of them also have unique mannerisms and activities they get up to in your apartment. Not only can trigger her zero gravity ability, I've heard that Fadia will just like start doing yoga in your apartment. Little stuff like that. And for example, one of the coolest versions of this I've seen, which I was not capturing unfortunately, and will likely never recreate this scenario again. But anyway, just picture this. So I'm walking in through the front door when I run into both Mint and Nanali, who I have of course invited to this one apartment. Both of them are doing that little like groggy, sleepy animation, which tells you that they might be about to try to go to bed, but Mint just happens to beat Nanali to the punch in this scenario, crawling into bed before she's able to. So immediately Nanali starts throwing one of her little tantrums, which is something that she'll do, I think, anytime she's trying to engage in a scenario or you're trying to tell her to do something and she's blocked out. So she starts throwing a tantrum because there are two of them here, but there's only one bed, and she'll get mad if her side of the bed is blocked. What followed this, however, was probably just a happy coincidence, but she proceeded to activate her zero gravity ability and then jumped up onto the ceiling and just started walking around the ceiling sulking, which was totally hilarious as like a sequence of events that really happened over the course of like 15 to 30 seconds at most, and one which I think is basically just like an emergent scenario. I don't think that this was something that was scripted out at all by the developers. It's more like an emergent scenario that just happened to happen when these different components, elements, or, behaviors that the developers have programmed into these individual characters collided in one of these really coincidental but serendipitous happy accidents. And it was really freaking cool. I'm really looking forward to hopefully seeing more stuff like that, just emerge out of all these weird life sim mechanics that they've programmed into the game. Now, obviously, this is one of those places where the sort of feature creep could become too much for them to even handle as they continue adding characters. I hope that they can continue to give us stuff like this with each new character, but anyway, what I've seen so far of this, just like the characters and the open world and everything being fleshed out and characterized through just engaging with the open world and the life sim mechanics so far has been really cool, and I really hope that they can keep that up as they continue to expand the roster of characters. But anyway, there's a little bit of a controversy over a few seemingly AI generated posters and the like scattered throughout the open world, and I'll admit to how obvious some of them are. I remember walking into a subway style tunnel at Bridge Crossing and seeing what I instantly knew before ever hearing about the controversy were 100% Grok style anime posters. Like, if you've seen that anime style enough, you know it when you see it, and that was and remains disappointing, especially since it's in Bridge Crossing, which is supposed to be like a famously beautiful area of the in-universe city. Now obviously there was a little more to it than just that. There was also this cutscene that originally played before you went in and done the Pink Paws heist. There was also this cutscene, which you see when you go see the movies. I want to say with Mint, but I'm not really sure about that one. I haven't done that encounter yet, so don't know if that's the one and don't know if it's still there or not. The Pink Paws heist has been replaced by just static at this point. There's also debate over whether the final cutscene implores AI for its animation or not, and for me, that one's difficult to tell. It could easily be one where they used AI for certain cuts, but it could just as easily be the case that the project was just kind of overzealous in how dynamic and hype they wanted things to be. There are definitely lots of scenes where characters go off model, and there are definitely those scenes where like suddenly the momentum of the animation reverses for seemingly no reason. And there are plenty of cuts that have a lot of flash, but not necessarily a lot of meaningful impact. But once again, I mean, that's something that we've seen in actual action anime before, when once again animators just arguably become overzealous with a vision that they're not quite capable of fulfilling to the level that people expect these days.
NTE has figured out how to simulate the feeling of something being well animated by making things very flashy and having stuff move around a lot. It's easy to convince an audience that something is cool if it's moving very fast and there's a lot of flashing lights. To prove what I mean, please locate a nearby flashlight and then close your eyes and strobe the light back and forth in front of your eyelids. You will immediately become disoriented and have no idea what's going on, but it's kind of exciting for no particular reason.
With all that said, for the record, the devs have been seemingly totally honest about this from the beginning, saying in interviews that core assets and character arts, for example, would not be generated using AI, but that they would absolutely be using AI for background assets, mood assets, testing, etc. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify that as best I could really quick. I think it's totally fine if people want to get mad about the use of AI. I mean, if anyone has a hardline stance about that and just doesn't want to support a game that employs it, that's totally fine, but I don't think anyone can really call them liars. And personally, I'm of the opinion that, you know, once again, it's disappointing that AI is used in such blatant ways, especially in such blatant ways like this. But in my opinion, it's just my personal perspective, but for me, this is a game that is free, that is better than most fully paid games. So it's difficult to be very mad about it, especially once again, knowing that the devs have been honest about how they were going to use AI and never claimed that they wouldn't be using it at all. Anyway, do not let anyone tell you, just because of that this is a lazy, uninspired open world, because it is absolutely not. Real work and passion and artistic direction has gone into the vast majority of elements in this open world, at least like 99% of it, and it freaking shows, my dude. So anyway, as for the story of the game itself so far, this is, besides actually pulling for characters, the one other part where I do really feel the fact that this is in fact a gacha game. So the story has all of the cheese and cliche and tropes that you would expect from an anime trope influenced gacha game storyline. And the story writing overall for each individual story mission is incredibly hit or miss all in all, but I've got to give them credit where credit is due. When the story missions are at their best, they're absolutely freaking hilarious, like genuinely freaking funny. They also feature a really impressive variety of different mission formats and, you know, just like the topics of the missions. Some being simple go to place and battle monster type missions, some being horror mystery themed, some being absolutely hysterical low-stakes gags, some being like auctions that culminate in light puzzle/platforming inside reality marble-like anomaly realms, etc. The story missions are not all just go to X place and fight X thing to unlock X accessory or whatever. And this is probably as good a time as any to mention that this level of variety is not just a part of the mainline story missions. It's a part of the side story episodes and even the open world exploration missions. The open world exploration missions are not always going to be just fighting an anomaly or fighting a little bit of crime or like delivering a stolen vehicle back to the police station. Sometimes an open world exploration mission is you getting sucked into an alternate anomaly realm and having to solve a puzzle to escape, or do like a Cyberpunk 2077 style rewind murder mystery thing to, solve a mystery before you're able to get your reward and get out of that anomaly realm. Similarly, there are of course obviously side story missions where you basically go fight a monster or whatever, but there are also lots of these side story bonding missions that you do with individual characters from the world, as well as all sorts of other weird, quirky side story episode missions, such as one that I've been doing recently, which basically starts with you meeting up with Haniel. She drags you off to a concert at night to watch this band perform, and then you end up like starting a band. Nonali gets pulled into the whole thing, and like you actually play the drum parts for the band and get graded on it. I'm multiple hours into this side story, and I can absolutely see it going on and on for a while because it's clearly supposed to culminate in us performing for this music judging anomaly. I think it's called Night of Moondog. And now that I've finished that string of side missions and seen the final cutscene for it, let me just say it's just as good as like any of the best cutscenes in the main storyline. I would argue it's more cohesive and more like easy to understand than the actual final cutscene of the main story mission. Which is all to say that I'm just really impressed at how good this final musical performance cutscene was that they put in here for a string of side missions. And it's really lengthy, really involved, really unique, involving a lot of unique mechanics. It's got tons of actual voice acting in it. I'm really impressed at how much variety there is in everything and the level of polish that went into a lot of these missions that a lot of people will probably never even see. And once again, a lot of them just being types of content that I never would have expected to see in a game like this to begin with. Anyway, to top it all off, while most of the dialogue sections in the story missions are boring and drawn out, as we've come to expect from games like this, some of the cutscenes and like manga style scenes and stop motion type stuff sporadically sprinkled throughout look absolutely amazing. Top tier cutscenes, at least when they're at their best. And speaking of hilarity, one thing that I've really appreciated, and I know a lot of people like to make fun of this kind of stuff, but I've really appreciated the abundance of freaking anime references. I mean, JoJo references, Naruto references, ReZero references, and even a Chainsaw Man reference to the freaking Tomato Devil of all things, which was born from the populace's fearful perception of not who Lacrimosa, the tomato juice drinking vampire, truly is, but who they believe Lacrimosa to be, in the same way that devils and Chainsaw Man are born of people's fear of certain concepts and entities. I wasn't convinced just from hearing the name Tomato Devil by itself, but after thinking back on all that, all of the circumstances and the memes, I think that's 100% a Chainsaw Man references. Once again, many such references throughout, and I'll admit they all make me giggle like a freaking idiot. But anyway, I'll admit this is all definitely a double-edged sword because I'm constantly tempted to skip cutscenes when they're endlessly yapping about boring prototypical gacha mission stuff and vague but incomprehensible sci-fi terminology with just the in-game footage, which sometimes seems to go on for freaking forever with no option to speed up the dialogue, unfortunately, and a skip line option, which often often takes multiple seconds after the line has actually been voiced for some reason, but I'm always afraid to skip it regardless, because what if I accidentally skip another sick freaking motorcycle chase cutscene or another hilarious cutscene full of glorious shonen anime references? It's a real dilemma of impatience that I'm constantly experiencing while playing the game, and once again, yeah, it's just a double-edged sword for the experience itself of the story missions. As for all that prototypical gacha game dialogue, at its worst, it's about what many will expect. Dialogue is sometimes filled to the brim with weird gacha game sci-fi terminology where, you know, basically the in-universe terminology feels like it's kind of just been inserted into a standard gacha game story template, which is incredibly cheesy and word salady, once again, when it's at its worst, but they do at least do you a solid by having the camera pan across all of the sexy mamacitas, the loveliest assets, so you've at least got something nice to look at occasionally if you, like me, kind of feel compelled to watch all of the dialogue and cutscenes just to make sure you don't miss anything you might actually like, which I occasionally do. I occasionally do, even in what seem like more boring cutscenes. Okay, so having now finished the story, I have to say, the writing thus far is definitely leagues better when it's not taking itself too seriously. I do think that all of the comedic story missions and over-the-top set-piece filled cutscenes and the big dumb fan service scenes have frankly all calmed down much smoother than the ones that are trying to be serious or deep or dark. I did still enjoy the final chapter, arguably the worst offender, but I did still enjoy parts of it, especially the visually stunning set pieces and of course the final boss fight. But it was trying really hard to make me feel something about all these new characters, and it just was not working. Definitely due in part to the fact that it was just really prolonged and really wordy, without a whole lot of interest to actually say at the end of the day. Also, I swear, I love all the fan service. I am not a prude. I love anime fan service, have for many years. I think censorship is literally evil. I want none of it. But you can't make me tear up while the camera is ogling a chick whose boobs are barely held back by thin bandages. That's just not going to have that effect. And that was obviously the effect that they were going for. So that felt a little at odds with itself as well, and was, you know, constantly present all throughout that big final portion of the final chapter. And once again, I mean, that's just an example of one of those elements that I would usually like in most types of scenes, but you know, once again, it has its place, and maybe this wasn't its place, as it made it a little bit difficult to take things seriously. But anyway, as a counterpoint to these complaints, I also must say that I've been really impressed by how polished and entertaining and like fully produced many of the side missions and anomaly hunts and the like are. I don't think that most of the side content here feels like an afterthought. Some of it certainly does, like some of the small interactions you get right after you raise a character's bond level. Some of those that like aren't even voiced do feel like an afterthought to a degree, unlike the actual like open world dates and apartment interactions and stuff that you can do with them. But most of the content here feels like real content that was always supposed to be there and was executed properly. And that, in combination with the comedic missions, which I've absolutely loved, and all of the open world dates and random open world character interaction cutscenes, which I've also loved, I feel pretty confident that there will be more cool story stuff that I'll enjoy coming down the pike, much like the stuff that I enjoyed in 1.0. I just might have to, you know, once again wade through a little bit of awkward cringe to get to it. But frankly, I'm okay with that. The rest of the game is good enough to justify it. The many good parts are enough to justify the handful of mediocre components, in my opinion. And back to the video. And on that point, the point about the game throwing you a bone with the fan service during the more boring cutscenes, it's definitely worth pointing out the game has plenty of nice and frankly blatant fan service and sex appeal throughout, as well as a few very nice custom outfits that you can unlock for many of your favorite characters, which I'm sure there will be many more to come later on. That is 100% going to be one of the main ways that they make money as they go. But as well as that, once again, there are also much less sexy but still present mechanics for inviting the ladies over to your apartment, going on little dates in town, driving around together, hanging out in the pool, falling asleep together, blah blah blah. They may not be crazy deep with like a lot of impressive, unique dialogue, but it's charming and it's got it's got waifu dating mechanics, and they are indeed very kawaii, very charming. Much like so many of the mini games and city tycoon experiences of upgrading apartments, buying and running cafes, street racing and all this stuff, there's a ton of just straight up life simulation type content in this game, generally speaking, which is another part of what makes it feel so addictive even for casual play. There is just so much freaking content of all types, whether it's doing the main story missions, which once again already offer a decent amount of variety, or battling monsters, or fighting crime impromptu out in the open world, exploring the open world just to see all of the cool sights and collect stuff, doing this game's version of dungeon crawling in the haunted subway. Speaking of the haunted subway though, for the record, Beyond the Rails, the Ghost Train mode, is a little bit boring for an endgame mode, to be honest. The enemies do hit pretty hard. It's definitely one of the hardest modes in the game currently, but they're really mostly just beefier versions of basic enemies with a simple boss thrown in occasionally. So Beyond the Rails really feels more like a simple DPS check than anything to me. And DPS checks are perfectly fine when they're individual components within larger raids or dungeons or whatever, but when the whole mode basically amounts to a string of prolonged DPS checks with bullet sponge versions of mostly basic enemies, I have to admit that is a fairly boring in-game mode. I get way more satisfaction from the anomaly pilgrimages, where you fight stronger versions of previous unique bosses from the story and the like, as well as, of course, the unique open world anomaly fights, the anomaly hunts, or anomaly commissions, I believe they're called, which have a much greater variety of actual gameplay and combat mechanics. But anyway, hopefully more unique end-game boss content is coming later. There are definitely multiple locations throughout the city that point to some kind of new content type and locations coming later, so we'll just have to wait and see what those look like when they get here. By the way, by the time I release this video, patch 1.1 will be about a week away. If you're interested in knowing what's coming, I would just go check out the 1.1 patch trailer on the NTE YouTube channel. I think it's only like 6 minutes long anyway, but it's safe to say that there is a ton of stuff coming, including a couple of new modes, some events, and even a brand new island to explore. So, safe to say, I'm pretty excited. But anyway, regardless, if that makes some people feel that the current in-game is a bit boring or sparse overall, I totally understand. But for me, the current in-game is maxing out my city tycoon level, making enough money to buy the apartments and rides that I want, and of course, maxing out my bond levels with Mint and Nonali and all the girls whose leisure costumes and dates I want to unlock. But anyway, as far as the actual, basic combat system itself goes, which I can't believe I haven't really talked about, 40 minutes into the video or something like that. But I'd say it's simple and relatively easy, but also fun and satisfying, with more depth to be found in things like synergizing teams and optimizing your rotations, getting the perfect substats for everyone, and keeping food buffs up and stuff like that, if you're interested in going that far with it. I just think that it's like one of those easy to get into, but there's more to it than it may first appear kind of combat systems. Not super deep, but there's more to it there than you might realize if you just discovered the game. I just enjoy switching out characters and trying to time my abilities, ultimates, and buffs/debuffs in at least a somewhat proper rotation to minimally maximize my output, while dodging the admittedly very clearly conveyed prompts to get out of the way of attacks or parry special moves, blah blah blah. Once again, it's not the deepest combat in the world, it's definitely not, and it's certainly not brutally difficult, but it's simple, flashy, fun combat in a game where I frankly spend more time exploring and engaging in leisure activities and stuff anyway. Now, if combat is the main article in any game for you, it's totally possible that this one will be too shallow or just too easy for you. But if you're okay with combat being one of many things that you can do, which is nonetheless relatively fun and satisfying, I think that you'll enjoy it. Now, what were we talking about again? Running a cafe, street racing, fishing, robbing banks, playing taxi driver, playing Tetris, pretending that you know how to play Mahjong, and a dozen other different mini games and life sim style features, more of which I'm sure I'll unlock later, and more of which I would imagine they'll be bringing to the game later. My favorite of which thus far is definitely the street racing. With that said, speaking of the street racing, I do love it, and I love driving around in this game generally speaking. I do it a lot just for the fun of it for literally no reason. But the driving feel itself is admittedly a bit too jerky, a bit too stiff. There's not enough like easing out. When you try to subtly turn into a curve, the car just kind of veers wildly in that direction, even if you barely touch the analog stick, which just makes it difficult. Like, when you're driving through like a subtle, not too sharp of a curve, just kind of slowly starting to veer off to the right, you want to slowly ease into it and have like a smooth transition as you turn into that direction, but you can't really do that in this game. You kind of just have to bump it a little and then bump it a little and then bump it a little, and it's not a smooth turning experience. The drifting itself feels great. Once again, the drifting feels great in the racing and in the open world. Turning on a dime feels good, and I do like that your tires and everything like react differently to rain and snow, and you have to get different types of tires to deal with that in the racing and in the open world. That is nice. But once again, like, the drifting feels great, but turning itself feels really stiff. That could really be smoothened out. All in all, we could just use a little more fine control over turning so that we can get those nice, subtle lean-ins and, you know, just get a smoother driving experience overall. But once again, I'm still loving it. I'm still loving the races and driving around the city. I just wanted to be honest about this fact. The handling, the driving feel, it's certainly not perfect, as satisfying as it is. Anyway, back to the video. But even the freaking gacha summoning mechanics and the module upgrades and stuff kind of have a mini-game-esque feel to them. I'm sure a lot of people will say that's just, you know, them making it feel like a casino, but it is kind of charming that there's at least like a gaminess to these mechanics. But, you know, all in all, it's just a lot, to the point that it was a bit overwhelming at first even. But almost all of it is, once again, optional, so you can really just casually play at your own pace and just engage with the content and the mechanics that you most enjoy. And once again, very easy to play as a casual, free to play, and still feel like you're making progress and just doing the stuff that you enjoy. In many ways, I'm personally basically completely ignoring the meta altogether, because I genuinely think this game is kind of just more fun that way. Just play it like it's a normal game. Ignore the gacha, ignore the meta, pull whatever characters you like, play whatever characters you like, watch the cutscenes or skip the cutscenes depending on your preferences, battle however you want, or, you know, look up how to chain abilities together in more efficient ways. Play casually or not, just do whatever you want, and I think most people will have a blast with this game, even if they don't care for gacha games. It's beautiful, absolutely freaking beautiful, and it's just a fun, gamey feeling game. Anyway, the main point that I wanted to try and make here is that while, you know, one of the main reasons I might have picked this up is because it's holding me off until Ananta shows up later this year, nonetheless, NTE actually made me love a gacha game again, as someone who kind of hates the genre as a whole. And as I'm probably going to title the video, I do think it proves that gacha games can in fact be great. Perhaps the funniest part, even if it's only really tangentially related, can you just imagine what it must be like to be publishing or developing one of these Western live service games, all of which seem to be falling off one after another, only to watch NTE pop up and make $14 million on its first day just because, well, because it has cute anime girls, awesome fan service, and fun gameplay. What a crazy concept. If only Sony could do something like that. If only Sony had the ability to publish IPs that they could do something like that with. It's almost embarrassing. But anyway, I guess the last thing I'll say is, if you are going to go check NTE out and you haven't already, this game is really meant to be played with a controller and or mouse and keyboard. Once again, it's 100% at its best if you can get it running at high settings on a PC, but I've had plenty of fun playing it on PS5 as well. Not nearly as much as I've played it on PC, but still fun. It might be worth installing the game on the phone as well, just so that you can open it up and collect revenue from your stores and stuff when you're on the go, but I'm not going to pretend that playing it on the phone exactly feels great. It arguably feels pretty janky even after you've experienced the combat and exploration as it should be experienced with a controller. So just play it with a controller like God intended. You can do pretty much everything that you would want to do in the game with a controller. I do think maybe mouse and keyboard might be easier for like setting up the layout for your apartment, like furnishing it if you really want everything to be perfect. But for the most part, I haven't really noticed anything that I can't accomplish with the controller that I would absolutely have to go to the mouse and keyboard or like a touchscreen or anything like that for. Pretty much everything can be done with a controller, and the controller definitely feels the best for the majority of combat and mechanics that you're going to be engaging in. Anyway, I'm loving this game. If you've been playing it or you're thinking about going to play it, I hope that you enjoy it as much as I have. I'm gonna go get back to work on another anime video and then probably play some more NTE, or maybe some Motor Slice. Anyway, peace.
Your Honor, I object!
And why is that, Mr. Reed?
This is awakening another thought in me that is just occurring to me now. The boys are not going to be happy to hear this. You and the listeners at home, but I have to say it anyway. Look, I'm aware that with gacha games, dude, gacha games are so great. We're fucking over the SJWs because like the girls are so sexy. They're so hot. It's awesome. Yeah, Japan, China, Korea. They're giving us what? Guys, listen, brothers, I hear ya. You are being fucking tricked. You are being psyoped. I know that they're sexy. I know, hey, maybe you don't have like a girlfriend in your life. I get it, man. I know what it's like to be lonely out there. But you are being drained of your fluids. You're being drained of your essence. And
you're being jealous. You're being jealous.
You're being literally jealous. You're being drained on all fronts, boys. And I think that maybe it's worth rethinking some of that time you're spending. I get it. The Zenless Zone Zero girls, right? They make them sexy, right? They Genshin Impact. I get it. There's a lot of that in there. Just boys, you're being psyoped. All right, it's time. It's time to come to Christ and say, no more, Satan.
And you have the street cred to back up this point because of your Tifa tits video. You have street cred. No one can test your cred on this point.
It's true. It's not like saying that like any sexy girls are bad. It's obviously it's not that point. It's that these particular games are just another flavor meant to drain you dry, gentlemen. Which you may be after with these games, but knock it off. All right, go out and talk to some real women instead.